أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه ثم أما بعد. Alhamdulillah, it's nice to be back to our first Seerah lesson after Ramadan, in which we started. Mahmoud, did we start last year or the start of this year? Pop quiz. Last year. Ahsant, Ben. See? Yeah, whatever. In which we started towards the end of last year, and which we're continuing, inshallah. Throughout before Ramadan, we did the majority of the Meccan period. So we started with obviously things like general information about the importance of the Seerah, and then some general background information of the young life of the Prophet ﷺ and his background. And then we went through his sifat, where we went through how the Prophet ﷺ looked and how he dressed and how he acted and how he behaved and what he liked and what he didn't like and the way he was with his companions and his wives and all of these things. Alhamdulillah, we covered all of that. And then we started with the Meccan period. And we went through from Revelation all the way until the stage in which we are now, in which we're starting to see the seeds get planted towards the migration to Madinah. So right now, we are in the final years of the Prophet ﷺ's life inside Mecca. And we are now working our way in the last few years before the Prophet ﷺ migrates. To be specific, how many years was the Prophet ﷺ lived? How many years did the Prophet ﷺ live in Mecca as a messenger? Not his life, but as a messenger. 13. Ahsantum. 13. We got up to the 10th year. We got up to the 10th year right after the Prophet ﷺ went to Taif to give da'wah over there. And then he has returned back. So the last thing in which we mentioned pretty much was the Prophet ﷺ goes to Taif to give da'wah, is rejected by them, and is harmed by them, and then comes back on his way to Mecca and the situations in which occur with the jinn, and then him entering into Mecca, and then some of the initial reactions that happen. So right now we're around that 10th year of the prophethood of the Prophet ﷺ. Meaning, and majority of what we're going to speak about occurs in the 11th year. So we're only a couple of years before the Prophet ﷺ starts to migrate. And even less before the companions themselves start to migrate. In the same year of the da'wah of the Prophet ﷺ to Taif, and he comes back, specifically in the month of Dhul Qa'dah, the Prophet ﷺ, he comes back to Mecca and he continues to give the same da'wah that he was given inside Mecca. We mentioned the phases of da'wah in Mecca, that there was the da'wah to the close family, then there was the da'wah that was in secret, and that which was happening in secret, where the Prophet ﷺ and the close companions such as Abu Bakr and the like were going out and speaking to people whom they could trust. They weren't giving da'wah openly. This was early on in the stages, but I'm just giving a reference. Early on in the stages, speaking to people whom they knew they could trust, people who were going to take the message logically and were not going to go and speak to the heads of Mecca and cause problems for them. So there was the da'wah to the close, Khadija, Abu Bakr, Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu, Zayd, and those who accepted Islam. Then there was the da'wah a bit secretly to those whom they could trust. And then we mentioned the open da'wah. The Prophet ﷺ stands up on the mountain of Safa and he starts to give da'wah. This continued all the way through to the time which the Prophet ﷺ migrates. So the Prophet ﷺ eventually starts to leave Mecca, like we mentioned happened with the traveling to Taif, where he goes and he gives da'wah. He comes back and he continues to do that which he was doing before he left, which was giving da'wah to the people inside of Mecca. But he also emphasizes on giving da'wah to people from outside of Mecca that were coming to Mecca, that would come to Mecca for trade, for business, and as we'll come to see, mostly for Hajj. Because like we mentioned before Ramadan, Hajj was not something that only started after the revelation to the Prophet ﷺ. Rather, the Arab tribes knew that the Kaaba was something that was virtuous and would come from the Arabian Peninsula to come and do worship there. And they had their own rituals of Hajj in which they would go and they would perform. All the way from which they learned from Ibrahim alayhi salam that had been corrupted and changed. And obviously now there are idols surrounding the Kaaba and all of the fasad that was going on. But they would still come to Mecca in order to do some types of worship. So the Prophet ﷺ is continuing to give da'wah and speaking to these people that are coming inside Mecca. Unlike that which he was doing before he went to Taif, he now also started to speak to the people that were coming about their general support for him. Previously, it was simply aminu billahi wa rasulihi, believe in Allah Azza wa Jal and His Messenger. And then it was establish your prayers and be good to the people and do not harm, and the general beliefs that were revealed in the Quran at that time. There were not many in terms of actions of belief. However, it was general belief. Now the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, post the 10th year of his prophethood inside of Mecca and post Taif, he starts to speak to these people about how they can support him and planting seeds in their minds about the possibility of him coming to them and them establishing a land together and things like this. For there was an added layer to the da'wah in which the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was doing, in which the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was giving to these people beyond that which he was giving before. For example, and we'll go through some examples of the da'wah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which he was giving, and the types in which he was giving them from those who accepted Islam around those parts. So as we said, we're in the 10th year. I'm going to continuously mention the years again so that we have it as a reference. We're in the 10th year and the people are starting to come for Hajj at that time. The Prophet ﷺ, he starts to meet with the various tribes from the Arabian Peninsula so that he can give them da'wah. And as we said, to speak to them about the possibility of them showing him some support. So he met with some tribes such as a branch of the tribe of Banu Kalb, which was also known as Banu Abdullah, and he began to call to them and he said to them, "O Banu Abdullah, indeed Allah made for your fathers a name that is good." And he tried to give them da'wah, yet they were rejecting of him. And then he also addressed a tribe named Bani Amir As-Salaam, and he called them to Allah Azza wa Jal, and they said from their words, "By Allah, I can take this young man from Quraysh and consume all of the Arabs with him." Meaning they saw the da'wah that he was giving and they saw an opportunity to use him to take over Quraysh. Because they're Arabs as well, and Quraysh are Arabs. But Quraysh are the heads of the Arabs. Why? Because they live around the Kaaba. They live around the Kaaba and the people need to come to them and they don't need to come to the people. So they start to think about, when the Prophet ﷺ is giving them da'wah, how we can use this as a means of us receiving a higher rank in this dunya. So then they ask him, if we were to give you allegiance and Allah gives you victory over your opponents, meaning Quraysh, will we succeed you in rule? Meaning after you rule and you retire, or after you rule and you pass away, are you going to make sure that it's from Bani Sa'sa'a that are the leaders of the Arabs at that time? The Prophet ﷺ replies and he says, the rule is up to Allah, He places it wherever He wills. So one of the members of the tribe, he says, should we stretch our necks out for you amongst the Arabs, then when Allah gives you victory, you would grant ruleship to others than us. We have no need for your affairs. So it shows that they were not going to believe in the Prophet ﷺ for the sake of Allah Azza wa Jalla and their belief in Him, but rather for the dunya. And many of the others that he approached. This tribe specifically, Banu Amir, Banu Amir bin Sa'sa'a, when they returned back to their area in their land, there was an elderly man amongst them. This is from what is mentioned from the historians, an elderly man who was amongst them that didn't go with them on their trip because he was too old. And they told him the story and they said a young man of Quraysh from the tribe of Abdul Muttalib was claiming that he was a prophet, and he contacted us asking for our support and a place of refuge in our land. When the old man heard this, he placed his hands in his head and he was so upset by the news, and he said, he is indeed from the descendants of Ismail, he is the truth, a real prophet. How did you allow this to happen, and how did you misjudge his words? For even from the other tribes amongst the Arabian Peninsula were of those who had knowledge of the scriptures that came, and from those who knew some of the sifat of a prophet that was going to come, and when they heard the news, they would have believed in him if he was there. Then there were some individuals who did believe in the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, such as Suwaid bin Samit, and he was from the poets of Yathrib, Medina at that time. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam gave him da'wah and he accepted Islam. There was also Iyas bin Mu'adh. He was also from the tribe of Al-Aus, and he came was given. He came specifically to the Prophet ﷺ to receive the Prophet ﷺ's support, he came to Mecca to receive support from Quraysh against the tribe of Al-Khazraj. Because we know that before Islam, the Ansar were split between two tribes, the Arabs of Medina. You have Al-Aus and you have Al-Khazraj, and they were constantly at war. So yes, he came to Quraysh to actually seek their support against Al-Khazraj. And then he heard the da'wah of the Prophet ﷺ, and he accepted it. Also Abu Dhar al-Ghifari, who is one of the companions whose name is more familiar to us and is famous, and there are hadith that have been narrated by him. He came and he was also given da'wah to the Prophet from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he accepted Islam. And some others such as Tufail bin Amr ad-Dawsi and others from amongst the companions who accepted Islam at that time. This was occurring in the first Hajj that happened in the 10th year, and also in the 11th year, where the Prophet ﷺ is giving da'wah. In the 11th year, the Prophet ﷺ continued this, giving da'wah to people that were coming from outside. And this now is where the Prophet ﷺ met with 6 men from the Ansar, who are they're not from the Ansar yet, because they're referred to as the Ansar after they accepted Islam and the Prophet ﷺ moves to Medina. But from those who will eventually be the Ansar, the believers of Medina, he meets them. The Prophet ﷺ and some of his companions, Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu and others, they were passing by the area of Al-Aqaba in Mina, in Mecca. So the Prophet ﷺ went and they heard that they were speaking. So the Prophet ﷺ approached them. And these are 6 men from Yathrib, from Medina. And they were from the Khazraj tribe. And they are As'ad bin Zurara, Awf bin Haritha, Rafi' bin Malik, Qutba bin Amir, Uqba bin Amir, and Jabir bin Abdullah. These specific companions of the Prophet ﷺ were those who came to Mecca and were from the tribe of Al-Khazraj, and the Prophet ﷺ met with them in this area of Al-Aqaba. And the Prophet ﷺ specifically gave them time to give da'wah. These people from Medina, the Arabs from Medina, were familiar with the concept of a prophet coming. Why? Because they were constantly reminded about it by the Jews. Because the Jews lived in Medina along with the Arabs, the Jews would constantly, whenever there was an issue amongst the Arab and amongst the Jews, they would constantly threaten the Arab that a messenger was going to come or a prophet was going to come, and he was going to come from Bani Israel, from amongst the Jews, and that he was going to allow them to fight against the Arabs and they were going to be victorious. So the Arabs inside Medina were constantly hearing this information of a prophet that's going to come, a prophet that's going to come, a prophet that's going to come. For the idea wasn't foreign to them. The idea wasn't foreign to them. So when the Prophet ﷺ said, he came to them and gave them da'wah, they were familiar with the concept, like we said. It's mentioned that the Prophet ﷺ went to them and he said, "Who are you?" They said, "We are from the tribe of Al-Khazraj." And they replied, he asked them, "Are you allies of the Jews?" Meaning, do you live amongst them? They said, "Yes." He said, "Then why not sit down for a little and I'll speak to you?" So the Prophet ﷺ began to give them da'wah. Eventually, the Prophet ﷺ, he said to them, they said to each other, "No, surely this is a prophet with whom the Jews are ever threatening us with." Meaning the Jews that they will constantly speak about, the prophet that the Jews will constantly speak about, this is the prophet whom is in front of us. We have left our community for no tribe. We have left our community for no tribe is so divided by hate and enmity as they are. In our community, they have the issues, like we said with Al-Aus and Al-Khazraj. And then they say, "Allah may cement our ties through you, through the Prophet ﷺ. So let us go and invite them to this religion of yours. And if Allah unites them in it, no man will be dearer to us than you." For they accepted the da'wah of the Prophet ﷺ, and then they returned back to Medina and they started to give da'wah at that point. They started to give da'wah to the people inside of Medina to the best of their ability. Also amongst this time, in the same year, for the 11th year of the da'wah of the Prophet or the bi'ath, the sending of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam married Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha. So it was around this time in which the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam married Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha, just so that we have a reference of that time. We'll get back onto the situation with the people of Medina. So now what I want you to put in your mind is that we're in the 11th year of the prophethood of the Prophet ﷺ. He's spoken to these six men, and some others, like we mentioned, there were individuals that had accepted Islam as well. He's spoken to these six men, they've gone back to Medina. And their affairs is they're giving some da'wah and they're living their life in Medina. And we'll see the result of their da'wah in the upcoming years. Now we go on back to the Prophet ﷺ after they leave, and the Prophet ﷺ is still living in Mecca. At a similar time, even though there is massive ikhtilaf, the Isra wal Mi'raj occurs. The Isra wal Mi'raj occurs. To show you the amount of difference of opinion and the how far apart the timeline in terms of the opinions of the scholars are, we'll mention some of the opinions of when it occurred. Regarding the exact date, like we said, there's mentioned many differences of opinion. Some say that it occurred during the year in which the Prophet ﷺ received the prophethood. Meaning that some of these scholars hold the opinion that it was 11 years ago from what we're speaking about. 11 years before this. The same year that the Prophet ﷺ received the revelation, some of these scholars hold, and some of these historians specifically, from amongst the scholars, hold that this is when Al-Isra wal-Mi'raj occurred. And Al-Tabari, rahimahullah, he specifically holds this opinion. It's also mentioned that it occurred 5 years after the beginning of the prophethood. 5 years after the beginning of the prophethood. And Imam al-Nawawi and al-Qurtubi both hold this opinion. It's also mentioned that it occurred on the 27th of Rajab during the 10th year of the prophethood. So a year and a bit before that which we are holding. And it's mentioned that from the scholars that hold that opinion, al-Allama al-Mansupuri. It's also mentioned that it occurred 16 months prior to the migration to Medina, for similar timing to which we are in now, during the month of Ramadan of the 12th year of the Prophet ﷺ's prophethood. It's mentioned that it was 1 year and 2 months prior to the migration of the Prophet ﷺ, meaning in the month of Al-Muharram, in the 13th year of the Prophet ﷺ. And then it's also mentioned that it was 1 year prior to the migration during the month of Rabi'ul Awal, in the 13th year of the prophethood of the Prophet ﷺ. That no one knows the exact date. And realistically, besides an informative benefit and a historical benefit, there's no real benefit to it. For those who are very specific on celebrating the Isra al-Mi'raj on the 27th of Rajab or other dates, the scholars amongst themselves hold a wide variety of opinions, and therefore that date, first and foremost, even if we knew it, is not a date of celebration or a date of fasting or a date of doing anything different. But especially with the difference of opinion, this is a further reason why we shouldn't allocate anything for those dates. Regarding Al-Isra al-Mi'raj, we'll mention some of the occurrences. And specifically, majority of this is from the statements of Ibn al-Qayyim. He says, Allah's Messenger was carried physically, and we emphasize physically because again, this is a difference of opinion. But the more correct opinion, according to many of the scholars such as Ibn al-Qayyim, is that it was a physical occurrence, meaning the Prophet ﷺ, in his jasad, the body that he had, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he, with the permission of Allah Azza wa Jal, with Jibreel alayhi salam, performed this entire journey. It wasn't a dream, it wasn't in spirit, as some claim, or with the dream, or some scholars hold with the spirit. Rather, it was physical. For the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, physically, according to the more correct view, he went from the masjid in Mecca, so the Kaaba, to Al-Bayt al-Maqdis in Jerusalem, riding on an animal called Al-Buraq, in the company of Jibreel alayhi salam. There, and we're not going to go through all the specific details, we're just going to skim through it because we've mentioned this in lessons before. There he tied his horse to the ring close to the masjid, and he led the prophets in prayer. All of the prophets he met there and he led them in prayer. Then during the night he ascended from Bayt al-Maqdis to the lowest heaven. Jibreel alayhi salam, he sought permission to enter. It was opened and he saw Adam alayhi salam. The Prophet ﷺ greeted him and Adam welcomed him. He returning his greeting and expressed his faith in Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, meaning his faith in the prophethood of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He saw the souls of martyrs on his right and those of the wretched on his left. Jibreel alayhi salam then ascended with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam to the second heaven, in which he sought permission to enter, and they enter and they greeted Yahya, the son of Zakaria alayhi salam. And he met Isa, the son of Maryam alayhi salam. And then they gave them greeting and they returned the greeting, and they also expressed their faith in Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Then they reached the third heaven where they saw Yusuf alayhi salam and they greeted him. They greeted each other and Yusuf expressed his faith in the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Then with Jibreel alayhi salam they went to the fourth heaven where they met with the Prophet Idris alayhi salam and they greeted him. Idris accepted the greeting and expressed his faith in the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Then they were carried to the fifth heaven where they met with the Prophet Harun alayhi salam. Again they greeted and expressed their faith in the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Then they went to the sixth heaven where they met Musa alayhi salam and again greeted, and Musa alayhi salam expressed his faith in the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. When they were leaving, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam saw that Musa alayhi salam had began to cry. He was weeping. So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam asked him, "Why are you weeping?" Musa alayhi salam, he answered that he was weeping because he witnessed a man sent after him, meaning the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who was able to lead more of his people to paradise than he himself. Meaning he saw the efforts of the Prophet ﷺ and the fruits of the da'wah of the Prophet ﷺ, and that it was greater than his own da'wah, and this was an appropriate saddening to him. Not a jealousy in an inappropriate way, but appropriate saddening that he wished he could have done more for his people. Then the Prophet ﷺ went to the seventh heaven and he met with Ibrahim alayhi salam. They greeted each other. Then Ibrahim expressed his faith in the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Then the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was carried to Sidratul Muntaha, the farthest lote tree, and he was shown Al-Bayt Al-Ma'mur, the much frequented house in the heaven, like the Kaaba, but in the heavens in which the angels go and they circumambulate daily. As the Prophet ﷺ, he mentioned 70,000 go every day and they do tawaf worshipping Allah Azza wa Jal, and they never go back. And this was from the beginning of creation. For the Prophet ﷺ witnessed this. Then he was presented before Allah Azza wa Jal. It's mentioned here he was brought so near that he was at the distance of 2 bows lengths away from Allah Azza wa Jal. The ulama have said that this is incorrect. From the ulama have said that this was incorrect, that the Prophet ﷺ did not, and that the narrations mentioned that the Prophet ﷺ got this close to Allah Azza wa Jal are incorrect. However, the Prophet ﷺ was in the presence of Allah Azza wa Jal at a distance that is appropriate. Allah Azza wa Jal revealed to his servant as he willed. Meaning Allah Azza wa Jal then began to reveal to the Prophet ﷺ that in which he revealed, which was ordaining the salawat upon the ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Allah Azza wa Jal, he ordains 50 prayers for him to enjoy every single day, meaning for the worshippers to worship every single day. So the Prophet ﷺ obviously accepts and then he goes back down. When he reaches the 6th heaven, Musa alayhi salam, he asked what occurred. The Prophet ﷺ told him that Allah Azza wa Jal has ordained 50 prayers for us. The Musa alayhi salam, he says, your followers cannot perform so many prayers. Go back to your Lord and ask him to decrease the number. So the Prophet ﷺ does this, and then Allah Azza wa Jal reduces the number by 10. And then Musa alayhi salam, again, he urges him to go back. Your people cannot do it. So then Allah Azza wa Jal reduces it again, and this occurs again and again until eventually Allah Azza wa Jal reduces it to 5. Allah Azza wa Jal reduces it to 5. Again, Musa alayhi salam, he says, your people cannot do so. Your people are not going to be able to fulfill it. And this is, we can see this in our time, that the number of people that fulfill their 5 daily prayers are small. But Musa alayhi salam, he's correct in the sense that he knows that the people are not going to be able to do it. And he mentions and he says that whether it's in this narration or in another narration, that when my people were asked to do less and they were not able to, that your people will not be able to do so. But the Prophet ﷺ, he says, I'm ashamed to go back to Allah Azza wa Jal, meaning I cannot go back to Allah Azza wa Jal, and he says, this is what I'm going to accept. And then it's mentioned that a caller calls down, he says, I have imposed my ordinance and lightened the burden among my slaves. And it's mentioned in some other narrations that it's 5 prayers with the rewards of 50. As some of the narrations mentioned. This is in general, and then eventually the Prophet ﷺ goes back down and is returned back in his bed, and all of this, and he goes back to his home, and all of this occurs in one night. When the Prophet ﷺ comes back to Mecca, he informs Quraysh of what has occurred. He informs them because this is da'wah, this is a sign from Allah Azza wa Jal. So he begins to speak to them that this is what occurred and this is what happened. They take this as a reason to mock the Prophet ﷺ. Even though he describes things to them that they know, how could he know this? That this is gharib, how could he know this? Such as things that were in Jerusalem. The Prophet ﷺ had never been, besides in this situation, had never been for travel, for whatever. But some of Quraysh had gone to go and trade. So when he's describing it, the information that had come back to them, it was correct that the Prophet ﷺ was saying. So they can hear the correct, how can he know this? But again, they wanted to mock the Prophet ﷺ. He told them about, as some of the historians have mentioned, about some of their animals that had run away and where they had gone. And that the Prophet ﷺ was correct in this. For all of these things, the Prophet ﷺ started to inform them as a sign that this actually occurred. But they continued to mock the Prophet ﷺ. And from the famous situations is that they went to Abu Bakr radiallahu ta'ala anhu and they said to him jokingly, like, do you hear what your companion is saying, what your friend is saying? Meaning like, can you believe that? Is this what you're actually believing? And it's mentioned that the Prophet, that Abu Bakr, he says, yes, I verify what he said. Or some of the narrations say, if he said so, then this is correct. And this is from the occasions that allowed the Abu Bakr to earn the title of As-Siddiq, the verifier of that which is true. So this is what occurred during Al-Isra wal-Mi'raj. We'll stop there. Inshallah, next lesson, next week, we'll go through the first pledge of Al-Aqaba. For now, we'll see the fruits that came out from those 6 men that went from Mecca from Medina to Mecca, received the da'wah and go back. And we'll see that the 12 that come from them to come back, and now the Prophet ﷺ begins the plan. This is from the first pledge of Al-Aqaba, is when you actually see now the plan to go to Medina starts. Because then the Prophet ﷺ sends to Medina who? Mus'ab. Sends Mus'ab to Medina to give da'wah there. So now we're seeing the spread of the Prophet ﷺ, and then as we mentioned, we're only a couple of lessons away from the actual migration of the Prophet ﷺ. But again, because it's so informative and it's so historical, we'll take bit by bit, inshallah. هذا والله أعلم صلى الله على نبينا محمد وجزاكم الله خيرا. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.